Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the Thousand Year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to follow. From the start of the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime way back in 2022 now, the Sternritter have risen up as the newest enemy faction of Bleach, declaring war on the Gotei 13 and the Soul Society as a whole on behalf of their god king Yhwach. These elite Quincy warriors have proven to be the most devastating villains of the series to date, challenging the captains and their allies, and even defeating and killing several of the heroes. Not only that, but Yhwach's personal royal guard, the Schutzstaffel, aided him in his conquest of the royal palace, something even Aizen was unable to achieve. And so, this is every single Sternritter in Bleach explained, from their abilities to their motives, their backstories where applicable, and more, as cohesive and succinctly as possible, designed to be a refresher on Bleach's current slate of villains before they make their final return in Cour 4 of the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime in 2026. And at this point in the anime, well, there simply aren't that many of them left. If you enjoyed the video, consider hitting subscribe down below to help support the channel. It is greatly appreciated, but this is going to be a long one, I think, no matter how succinct we try and keep it, so let's get on with this thing. Up first is Yhwach's heir apparent to the Vandenreich itself, and once one of Ichigo's closest friends, Uryu Ishida, who becomes Sternritter A, the antithesis, after he is inducted into their ranks. Yhwach appointed Uryu as his successor due to the fact that Uryu was able to survive his Alsvalen, as he has some power that supersedes even Yhwach's own. On his honour as a Quincy, Uryu joins the Vandenreich not just to avenge the murder of his mother, but to protect the lives of the innocent who still yet live, whom Yhwach's insane plan will affect, recalling the words of his teacher Soken. Uryu's Shrift, the antithesis, allows him to reverse the positions of any two given targets, as we see when he finds himself ensnared in Senjumaru's bankai, only to suddenly swap places with her completely. In the anime, Uryu's role as a Sternritter has been greatly expanded, and now includes him actually fighting and killing a member of the Zero Division, as well as new battles with both Ichigo and Renji. On top of this, he even has a Volston dish now. In the end, however, Uryu's ruse is uncovered, and he faces off with Hashwolf in a final battle to the death. In the manga, Uryu's plan to bring down the Vandenreich was to scatter chips made of the same material as his grandfather's Sanrei glove around Varvelt, and use them to break down the reishi bonds of the palace, holding it in place and causing it to self-destruct. In the anime, however, Uryu's true plot is currently unknown. Throughout the Thousand Year Blood War arc, Uryu's spirit weapon, his bow, changes regularly, including again during his final duel with Hashwolf, and his tenure as an actual member of the Sternritter lasts from chapter 537 to chapter 660. Ugram Hashwolf is Sternritter B, the Grand Master of the Sternritter and liaison to the Emperor of the Vandenreich, the one who rules in Yhwach's stead while the Quincy King sleeps, bearing the mask of the ruler. After being recruited into the Lichtreich as a teenager, Hashwolf was immediately made captain of Yhwach's newest combat unit, the Sternritter. The reason for Hashwolf's devotion to Yhwach is twofold. The Quincy warlord inadvertently rescued Hashwolf from the clutches of his abusive uncle, before later making him feel needed in a world where he was otherwise resigned to being little more than a follower. Similarly to Yhwach himself, Hashwolf is a special Quincy born once every 200 years, one who can't absorb reishi like all other Quincies, but can instead give power to those around him. Hashwolf's spirit weapon takes the form of an ornate longsword with a pair of scales decorating the guard. Hashwolf's Shrift, the Balance, lets him take any good fortune that's occurred within his sphere of influence and redistribute it as misfortune, allowing him to perform incredible feats, such as when he tried to execute his fellow Sternritter Kang Du. Kang was able to initially block Hashwell's sword strike with his own power, the Iron, a move which was considered good fortune, allowing Hashwell to take that luck and redistribute it back upon Kangdu as misfortune, meaning the Grand Master was suddenly capable of cleaving through Kangdu's defences like they were nothing. Hashwolf is forced to kill his rebellious former best friend Basby after he turns against the Vandenreich, and later battles Uryu after discovering the truth of his betrayal. Once Yhwach's power of the Almighty has reawakened, Hashwolf can use a limited form of this ability while Yhwach sleeps. In the end, although Hashwolf remains loyal to his king, he feels a deep regret over the way things ended with Basby, and gives Uryu the chance to be the friend he failed to be in what he believes to be the world's final moments. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Hashwolf is the longest spanning Sternritter of the arc, surviving from chapter 486 all the way to chapter 681. The most surprising Sternritter of the group is likely to be Sternritter C, the compulsory Pernida Pankajaz, whose true identity is the left arm of the Soul King. Initially concealing their peculiar appearance beneath a massive hooded cloak, Pernida is in fact the sentient left arm of Adnias, which split from him when he transformed the primordial world into the 3 worlds of Bleach that we know today. 1,000 years ago, Yhwach stole Pernida from Ichibei Hyosabe during an intense confrontation, and since then, Pernida believes itself to be a Quincy. Pernida's power of the compulsory isn't a true shrift, instead it's a power it has always possessed due to being a piece of Reo himself, and Yhwach simply assigned it a name as such. The compulsory allows Pernida to drive its nerves into anything they come into contact with, allowing it to forcibly control its targets, both living and inanimate. And anything living that those nerves touch, Pernida can learn and evolve from, even taking on the mannerisms and abilities of opponents it fights. While the right arm of the Soul King represents stillness, the left arm governs progression, and this is seen in Pernida's other ability to evolve and multiply constantly. For example, if one of Pernida's fingers are removed, it can grow not just an entirely new hand from said severed finger, but a whole new arm as well, that can act completely independently of the original. While Pernida didn't receive a Volsten dish in the manga, in the anime it is given a gold holy form where the wings are shaped like hands, a nice little piece of foreshadowing. Also, the anime seemingly depicts Pernida's Quincy cross as being in its eye, though that could have also just been a weird visual flourish. Lasting from chapter 599 to chapter 644, Pernida is the shortest-lived member of the Schutzstaffel. Askin Naklavar Sternritter D, the death-dealing, is my favourite of the bunch. Aloof, sly, and purposefully unassuming, Askin is the only Sternritter promoted to Yhwach Schutzstaffel during the events of the war, noting that he was chosen by Yhwach due to the fact that he seemingly just can't die. Which, while I doubt is an official criteria, makes a lot of sense when you look at the other Schutzstaffel. Askin is motivated by a desire to see what kind of world Yhwach might create once he's destroyed the current 3 worlds and restored the universe to its primordial state, claiming that while he is loyal to Yhwach, in truth, he's mostly just interested in the Quincy King and what a once-in-a-lifetime man like him can accomplish. Askin is the savviest of the Sternritter, bucking many of the trends and tropes that come with the genre, and as a result stays alive for a long time as one of the most enduring members, lasting from chapter 494 to chapter 666, and even defeats a string of powerful foes. Askin's Shrift allows him to control the lethal dose of any substance. By ingesting a substance, like blood or reishi for example, he can alter the lethal dose of blood in his target's body or poison them with the very reishi in the air around them. Askin's power applies to himself as well. By ingesting a large amount of something, he can develop an immunity to it, such as when he's struck by Yushiro Shunko. Since he survives the attack, any further attempts to use it against him become completely useless, and Askin can even heal any wounds he's received as a result of ingesting said attack as well. This means the only way to actually kill Askin is to ensure you take him down in a single hit, so he's unable to gain an immunity, and ultimately that's exactly what happens in the end. Askin's Quincy Cross is found in his wrist bracelet, and he draws a modulated bow capable of firing 2 arrows at once. Askin's purple Volston dish is called Hashane and takes on a molecular appearance, while his signature attack is the Gift Ball, a slow-moving poison ball that's capable of instantly downing powerful characters like Yoroichi and Grimjo. Sternritter E, the Explode Bambietta Bastabine, has the ability to launch orbs of reishi that, when they make contact with something, can turn that target into a bomb, no matter what it is. The self-appointed leader of the Bambis, Bambietta is known for taking unsuspecting young men back to her personal quarters in order to vent her frustration, before then brutally killing them, and is the Sternritter responsible for stealing Komamura's bankai, Kokujo Tengen Myo. Bambietta can't understand why Komamura would willingly throw his life away in order to fight her, as she believes that people only fight in order to survive. Her explosive Reiatsu has the power to swallow up entire city blocks even before activating her Volston dish. Speaking of which, Bambietta's Volston dish, Zophiel, which was only named in the conceptual materials for the anime, enables her to fling multiple reishi orbs at once, raining fire down upon the battlefield. She's later killed and transformed into a zombie by Giselle, at which point her personality changes and she becomes scared and submissive. Despite technically dying and then being reborn, I'm going to count this as the entirety of Bambietta's manga lifespan, and arriving in chapter 490, Bambietta was one of the very first wave of Sternritter we ever saw, and she survives in some sense until chapter 603. Despite being a member and ostensibly the leader of the Bambis, Bambietta doesn't share in several of their motifs or shared design elements, such as the way the other four members wear individually coloured heart-shaped bags or buckles or pouches that contain their Quincy crosses. Initially, speaking of spirit weapons, Bambietta was depicted wielding a curved sword, but as of the second invasion she never uses it again. Sternritter F. the Fear Asnod is a terrifying religious Quincy who was rescued from the brink of death by Yuha Bark himself. At some point in the fairly recent past, Asnod was a sickly, bedridden man who was terrified of going to hell when he died. Recognising Asnod as a survivor of some sort of calamity, Yuha Bark bestowed him with a shrift, saving his life. Now, Asnod serves Yuha Bark out of fear, living in a constant state of terror, horrified that the Quincy King could, on a whim, rob him of his life. Asnod manifests this abject horror he experiences through his power of the fear, which, when he strikes someone with his ring of reishi thorns, consumes the target in an unstoppable primal fear that's so overwhelming it eventually causes their hearts to burst. This ability, this primal fear, is so strong, so instinctual, that even a captain-level opponent like Byakuya cannot overcome it, even with his centuries of battle experience and readiness. Speaking of which, Asnod is the Sternritter responsible for stealing Byakuya's bankai Senmon Zakura Kageyoshi, and unlike most of the other Sternritter, actually uses it devastatingly well during battle. Asnod's Quincy Cross is found underneath his eye, and to release his holy form, he has to roll said eye backwards entirely. Meanwhile, Asnod's Volston dish Tartar Foraz, a form that changes his appearance considerably more dramatically than the average holy form, can inflict the fear upon his opponents simply by having them lay eyes on his twisted new self. Despite his impact and popularity, Asnod is a pretty short-lived Sternritter, lasting from chapter 494 to 570. While Bambietta likes to consider herself the leader of the Bambis, it's likely the true leader, if there really is one at all, is Sternritter G the Glutton Lil Toto Lamperd. Despite her small and even childlike appearance, Lil Toto is the most level-headed and calculating of the Bambis, and possesses a truly grisly ability. The glutton transforms Lil Toto's mouth into that of an elongated cartoonish jaw, lined with razor-sharp teeth. In this form, Lil Toto can devour virtually anything, and regularly cannibalizes her Shinigami opponents. But it also leaves Lil Toto with an unending hunger, something reflected in her personal desire for limitless food, which she hopes Yhwach may grant her if she succeeds in killing Ichigo. Like the other Bambis, Lil Toto keeps her Quincy cross in a yellow heart-shaped pouch on her waist, and her spirit weapon takes the form of a bow in the shape of a pair of jaws. Where many of the Sternritter are violent and treacherous towards their own comrades, Lil Toto seems to genuinely value her friends, going so far as to incapacitate Meninas when she's brainwashed by Pepe, rather than outright killing her, before killing Pepe himself for forcing them to fight. And once Yhwach betrays her, unleashing the Auswählen upon both Lil Toto and her fellow Quincy, she realizes they meant nothing to him all along, and works alongside the Shinigami for a chance at revenge. Lil Toto's Volston dish Gagael was only seen briefly in the manga, but in the anime it is greatly expanded on, given its name, a full moveset, and used in battle with Ichigo. Lil Toto again manages to last a decent amount of time in the arc, first appearing in chapter 544 and last appearing in chapter 635. A hot-headed and rebellious Sternritter Basby, or if we go by his true name Bazard Black, is Sternritter H the Heat, a Quincy with the power to manipulate fire. Once the son of a lord in medieval times, Basby swears revenge against Yhwach after the Conqueror sacks and decimates the Black family home. Once Hashwolf turns against Basby all those years ago and abandons their dream of bringing Yhwach down, Basby later joins the Lichtreich's newest combat unit, the Sternritter, in the hopes of finally getting some answers from his long-lost friend. Basby is a highly capable warrior and helps the Vandenreich devastate the Shinigami during both of the major invasions. However, once Yhwach decides Basby and the remaining Sternritter left fighting are expendable, Basby, seemingly for some reason surprised at the way Yhwach is treating them, organises a revolt and joins forces with the Shinigami. However, it turns out that Basby's real grudge is with Hashwolf, and all is revealed during their shared flashback, the Friend Saga set 1,000 years in the past, before the Sternritter Grand Master kills Basby once and for all. Basby wears his Quincy cross around his neck, and his spirit weapon takes the form of a crossbow. Basby's Shrift, the Heat, is one of the best realised power sets among the Sternritter. While Basby can, at a base level, simply control both flames and heat, his signature move is the Burner Finger and its variations, where he shoots a concentrated bullet of fire from the tip of his finger, which can also become a two-pronged slash, a lava flow, a flaming sword, or even a conical spiral of inescapable flame. Interestingly, Basby is shown infuriated by the fact that Uryu is appointed Yhwach's successor over Hashwolf, to the point where he claims a vested interest in the title if Hashwolf doesn't want it. Unsurprisingly, Basby is one of the Sternritter with the longest manga lifespan, stretching from chapter 490 to chapter 634. A stoic and cold Quincy Sternritter Kangdu was responsible for stealing Hitsugaya's bankai Daiguren Hyorin Maru. Kangdu is driven by his belief that those who live together should also die together as well. Alongside his Shrift, the Iron, which coats his skin in a layer of impenetrable metal, Kangdu favours high-speed hand-to-hand martial arts combat, in which he is quite adept, while wielding a pair of reishi claws as his chosen spirit weapon. Kangdu admits to not believing in pantheism, and grows irritated when Hitsugaya continues to speak to his bankai as though it's alive. Kangdu is extremely loyal to Yhwach, to the point where, even in failure and facing execution, Kangdu openly defies Hashwolf's attempts to kill him, wishing only to die by Yhwach's hand. Sadly, despite a really cool design, Kangdu only lasts from chapter 495 to chapter 559. The very first Sternritter to be seen in action is Sternritter J the Jail Kirige Opie, who turns out to be one of the most proficient and zealous warriors among them. As the captain of the hunting unit, Kirige is the only Sternritter given direct control over another arm of the Vandenreich itself, and he oversees the subjugation and recruitment of Waco Mundo and the Arankar. Ruthlessly efficient and strong, Kirige demonstrated the power of the Vandenreich by defeating numerous Arankar and even battling Ichigo himself. Kirige is a domineering and evil man who not only follows Yhwach Arc's every command, but is willing to give his life to ensure the success of his mission. Keep Ichigo in Waco Mundo at all costs. And Kirige mostly succeeds. Using his shrift The Jail, Kirige imprisons Ichigo in the Garganta on his way back to the Serete, an inescapable cell that seems to be, at least on the outside, impossible to deal with for anyone that isn't a Quincy. Despite his success with it, Kirige's shrift is very situational, and as a result he's one of the few Sternritter to also employ a plethora of traditional Quincy techniques, from Reishi domination to his Volstendish Piskiel and even Ranso Tengai, being the only Sternritter to do so. Kirige's Quincy cross hangs from his belt and transforms into an officer's saber when used. Since the manga's ending, Kirige has been the subject of numerous club outside Q&A entries, where Kubo has revealed that he taught numerous members of the Sternritter how to fight, and that he is in fact one of the most powerful of the bunch. Despite a short tenure in the arc, ranging from chapter 487 to chapter 500, the difference here between Kirige's portrayal and many of the other Sternritter who technically survive for much longer is that he is a major force to be reckoned with throughout that entire time, eclipsing even the likes of Gremmy, a character with a similar tenure but ultimately a lesser one. One of two Sternritter to never have their shrift revealed, Sternritter KBG9 is a robotic Quincy who was responsible for stealing Soifon's bankai, Jakuho Raikoben. Unflinchingly pragmatic in his approach to finding Soifon, interrogating Omaida, and even going so far as to grievously wound the lieutenant's younger sister, BG9 unveils a litany of different spirit weapons at his disposal, from sharp-tipped, wiry tentacles to a gigantic minigun, and even rockets embedded beneath his armoured plating. In the anime, it's revealed as well that BG9 can self-repair after serious injury, and produces oil when cut, rather than blood. While BG9's shrift remains a secret, there are some clues to its identity, or at least I think there are anyway. He makes numerous references to having acquired data in certain scenarios, and after being struck by Soifon's Mukyu Shunko, he suddenly discovers how to perfectly counter her attacks, quickly overwhelming the captain. Despite his inhuman nature, he begs for his life when scheduled for execution, unlike Kangdu. BG9's lifespan in the manga ranges from chapter 490, you can just about make him out on this double-page spread, all the way through to chapter 559. While many of the Sternritter are actively aggressive to one another, no Sternritter is quite so overtly sinister and deliberate about it as Sternritter L the Love, Pepe Wakabrada. Pepe's shrift causes those he targets to fall completely in love with him, forcing them to blindly do his bidding. And this power works so long as the target has a heart with which to experience love, meaning he can control even Zanpakuto. Using his power, Pepe betrays Meninas and Lil Toto, taking control of Meninas and using her to try and kill her friend, with Pepe hoping to wipe out his fellow Sternritter in order to take all of the glory for himself. Seemingly the antithesis of Yhwach Arc's no infighting rule. Pepe believes that love is the source of all conflicts throughout the world, and yet despises it when people refute his love. His Volstendish, Gudoero, transforms him into a monstrous version of Cupid, and when faced with death at the hands, or should I say teeth, of Lil Toto, Pepe begged for mercy, breaking down in his final moments. Pepe's Quincy Cross is found within the eyeball of his strange, almost wizard staff called Bechamel that he keeps on his back, and he lasts from chapter 500 to chapter 597. Another member of TYBW Arc's Schutzstaffel is Sternritter M. the Miracle, Gerard Valkyrie, a powerful titan who is wholly devoted to his god king, going so far as to continue swinging his sword for his god even in death. Dressed in medieval attire, Gerard is a proud and boastful man, yet surprisingly upbeat, and shows an unusual amount of camaraderie for a Sternritter. His shrift, the Miracle, allows him to achieve the impossible when up against insurmountable odds, and this takes on many different forms. From his body growing bigger and stronger when damaged, to his holy sword Hoffnung, his chosen spirit weapon, reflecting injury back upon those who break it, and even being capable of literally achieving seemingly impossible tasks. Gerard can even resurrect from death, again seemingly an infinite number of times, and his giant Quincy Cross is located at his very core, akin to his heart. And speaking of his heart, Gerard is in fact the heart of the Soul King, though it seems like he is more of a vessel, rather than a literal embodiment like Pernida. Again though, as with Pernida before him, Gerard's power wasn't given to him by TYBW Arc, but instead existed already as a result of his affiliation with Rayo. TYBW Arc simply gave it a name that suited. There are numerous peculiarities about Gerard's design, from his weirdly artificial eyes to the fact he doesn't have any fingernails when in his holy form Ashtonig. Despite being one of the most potentially interesting Sternritter of the bunch, we really don't know anything about Gerard. But since his fight will be a major focus of Cour 4, I'm hoping the anime really fleshes him out. After all, he is also one of the longest standing Sternritter of the bunch, lasting from chapter 599 all the way through to chapter 680. The only other Sternritter whose shrift was never revealed is Sternritter N. Robert Akutrone. As an older member of the Sternritter, Robert understands what TYBW Arc is truly capable of, as well as how the Quincy King actually views those fighting for him. As such, Robert is determined to win His Majesty's favour by killing Ichigo, and when he realises that he has run out of time, he becomes absolutely manic and terrified. Though his final moments differ greatly between manga and anime. Robert's spirit weapon of choice is a pair of handguns, and he often carries a briefcase with him as well, though what's in it we have no idea. Robert's Volstendish Grimaniel gives him a set of green wings in the shape of speed lines, and his ability set is themed around moving at incredibly high speed. Even if, again, we don't know what his shrift actually is or does for sure, though several years ago I came up with the idea of the Navigate, that Robert's shrift identified enemy blind spots and immediately teleported him to them in order to exploit them, as we see when he manages to shoot out Kyoraku's eye and when he gets dangerously close to the side of Ichigo's head. Hell, even in his final scene, he suddenly appears in Lil Toto's blind spot. And, like I just said, in the first invasion, Robert is actually responsible for shooting out Kyoraku's eye, an injury the Captain Commander carries with him to this very day, while his actions in the second invasion are expanded on a little bit in the anime. Robert lasts from chapter 494, being one of the initial wave of Sternritter that we met, through to chapter 603. Sternritter O the Overkill Driscoll Bursey grows stronger with every enemy, ally, or even beast that he kills, and he's responsible for not only stealing Sasakibe's bankai Koko Gonryu Rikyu, but also murdering the vice captain, resulting in the first named character death of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. But even crazier, the first named good guy to die in the series' entire present-day storyline. So, yeah, despite his short amount of screen time, Driscoll has a pretty big impact, all things considered. His chosen spirit weapon is a pair of bands worn over the top of his knuckles that, when pressed together, allow him to conjure a gigantic Heilig file that Driscoll then launches like a javelin, the same weapon he used to kill Sasakibe. Driscoll's lifespan in the manga runs from chapter 494 to chapter 504. Another member of the Bambis is Sternritter P. the Power Meninas Macallon, a pink-haired girl with superhuman strength. Thanks to her shrift, Meninas can deliver devastating all-powerful punches and even lift entire city blocks over her head. Like the other Bambis, she keeps her Quincy cross in a pink pouch in the shape of a heart, this time attached to her belt buckle, and her Heilig Borgen takes on an ornate curved shape with an elegant heart motif. During her battle with Ichigo, Meninas seems to indicate that she wishes for Yhwach Arc to grant her a life of luxury were she to win, with her vision showing a beautiful, pristine palace behind her. Meninas' Vollständisch Pornipora grants her a pair of fluffy pink wings made up of hearts, and in the extended version of her fight from the anime, she wields a set of dumbbells in battle that can transform into a pair of dancers spinning batons. She doesn't have an awful lot of screen time in the manga, with Meninas' lifespan only running from chapter 544 to chapter 594. Perhaps the Sternritter we know the least about is Sternritter Q the Question Berenice Gabrielli, a talkative man whose shrift allows him to object to something about his target, even potentially their very existence itself. If the target is unable to overcome that objection, they suffer as a result. Berenice has the dubious honour of being one of 3 Sternritter to never appear alive in the present timeline. They are immediately killed by Kenpachi before he can even begin using his power, and Berenice's first appearance in the canon involves their corpse being unceremoniously dumped on the ground. So, in regards to their manga lifespan, they don't really have one. Though I guess we could just say it's chapter 502 to 503, but like I said, they arrive on the scene already dead. Which I do think is a first for Bleach characters. And speaking of which, in a very similar boat, another hastily dispatched Sternritter is Sternritter R. the Raw Jerome Guizbat, a huge Quincy who, thanks to his shrift, can transform into a monstrous beast capable of unleashing sonic shockwave roars. These roars have enough power to burst the heads of nearby Shinigami officers, though it wasn't enough to protect him from Kenpachi, and he too is later dumped onto the ground by the captain, and so shares an identical lifespan, if you can call it, to Berenice. A loud and boisterous man with a flair for the dramatic, masked masculine Sternritter S the Superstar is up next. Dressed like a Mexican luchador wrestler, Masked Masculine believes himself to be a hero of justice, and that his enemies are villains who need to be defeated. Like many of the other Sternritter, Mask wants to make a name for himself on the battlefield, but Master Masculine is a rare Sternritter who doesn't seem to utilise a spirit weapon at all. Instead, he fights with various wrestling moves and uses his immense physicality. This is all made possible thanks to his shrift, the Superstar, which applies a nebulous power-up to him whenever he's cheered on by his fan, a strange little man called James. These power-ups allowed Master Masculine to secure an impressive string of victories, even casually defeating 2 captains who were using bankai. Master Masculine's Quincy Cross is located in the centre of his wrestler's belt, and his Vollständisch drapes him in a glittering cape. However, once seriously injured, Mask drops all pretense of fighting for justice, noting angrily that he doesn't care about any of that, and instead just wants to kill his foe. In reality, the fan, James, is in fact the true Sternritter, and Mask is but a projection of the ideal hero that James worships. But Mask himself has a manga lifespan stretching from chapter 495 through to 564. Candice Catnip is the next member of the Bambis, and the most recent to acquire Quincy Vollständisch. As Sternritter T the Thunderbolt, she's capable of not only generating lightning strikes and blasts, but she can become electricity itself in order to zip around the battlefield faster. Candice is vain and temperamental, wanting to kill Ichigo because he messed up her hair after she spent so long working on it the morning of the battle. Although loud and authoritative, it's pretty clear that Candice is perhaps the greenest of the Bambis overall, despite the fact that it's Candice who tells the others that Yhwach Arc will grant them their wildest dreams. Her dream is never actually revealed. Like the others, she keeps her Quincy cross in a green heart-shaped pod, and her bow takes on a jagged lightning shape. Her Volston dish, Barbariel, grants her 6 wings in the shape of lightning bolts, and uniquely, Candice can break off her wings to wield them individually as blades. Again, despite being kind of the loudest Bambi, apart from maybe Bambietta herself, and of the remaining 4 of them, the one who takes the lead the most, Candice is actually the Bambi with the shortest tenure of them all in the manga, running from chapter 544 to chapter 594. Exactly the same as Meninas, but Meninas actually shows up and lasts a bit longer in that final chapter. Sternritter Yu, the underbelly Nanana Najakoop, is one of the weirdest Sternritter of the bunch, from a narrative perspective. He's a character that just kind of exists, and yet persists, managing to last from chapter 495 all the way through to chapter 623. And the underbelly is a weird shrift as well. By spending time observing his targets, Nanana gets a readout on their Reiatsu, and can then target said Reiatsu and pick it apart, dealing potentially massive damage. Nanana even manages to render Aizen of all characters momentarily unable to move after striking him with the underbelly. Nanana's bow takes the shape of several interlocking circles from which he can fire up to 9 arrows at a time, while his Volstendish wings are made up of orange rings laid out in a sequence. By his own admission, Nanana doesn't understand art, and he's so loyal to Yhwach, blindly loyal, that unlike several of his comrades, he stands by their king even after being betrayed by him. One of the most unusual Sternritter is Sternritter V, the visionary Gremmy Thamo, who before the second invasion spent the majority of his time locked away in a cage deep within Silburn, due to how dangerous his power really is. Though I've always wondered how the cage was capable of withstanding the visionary in the first place, or if Gremmy was simply content to just sit there alone. It's made especially weird by the fact that he is present for Yhwach's proclamation in the anime, where obviously we didn't see half of the Sternritter in the manga during that sequence. But did Gremmy just then return to his cage after being let out specifically for that speech? It's a little bit weird. Regardless, Gremmy's shrift allows him to turn imagination into reality. Anything he imagines becomes real. A young child, Gremmy has a naive perspective on war and combat, believing himself to be the strongest Sternritter, and therefore never needing to try and prove himself or his power. As a result, he's simply not well versed in battle at all, and when faced with the fight-loving, battle-hungry Kenpachi, is forced to quickly learn and understand what it actually means to be in a fight. Gremmy is a great example of a Sternritter who didn't feel like a Quincy at all. No bow, no arrows, no Volstendish, nothing like that. He purely uses his shrift. And I guess with a power like that, that does make sense. Gremmy's true form, however, is that of a brain in a jar, which has manifested everything else around it. Believed by many to in fact be the brain of the Soul King, though the manga itself never makes reference to this idea at all. Gremmy is a little bit similar in regards to his lifespan to the likes of Kirige Opie. Gremmy lasts from chapter 572 to 579, so it's similar to Kirige in that they exist for a short number of chapters, but they dominate those chapters that they're in, albeit Gremmy is in fewer chapters than Kirige. Thanks to his ability to imagine things into reality, Gremmy is capable of creating life itself, as shown by Sternritter V, the Vanishing Point Gwenail Lee, who has a surprisingly in-depth and well-thought-out ability for someone who is a figment of someone else's imagination, the power to alter his state of existence across 3 different stages. Initially, Gwenael can simply turn invisible, while in stage 2, he becomes intangible, and by combining those first 2 stages, he is nearly impossible to touch, leaving behind only a brief afterimage. However, in stage 3, Gwenael vanishes from his opponent's memory entirely, so not only can they not see him, not only can they not touch him, they forget he even existed. While Gwenael clearly displays his own free will and his own mind, he is brutally killed anyway by his creator Gremmy, who simply imagines his death when he's done with him. For his spirit weapon, Gwenael conjures a dagger, and he lasts from chapter 570 to 572. Another of Gremmy's creations is the enigmatic Shaz Domino, though again you wouldn't know it simply by reading the manga. Shaz appears for a single chapter and is quickly defeated by Ichigo before he can really say anything about himself, though we can see that he uses throwing knives as his spirit weapon. In the supplementary story The Beginning of the Revive of Tomorrow, Shaz's power is revealed to be called the Viability, where his body will automatically heal and replace any injured or lost parts of itself using the ratio of his surroundings. And by completely replacing his body, he's eventually able to free himself of Gremmy's control, leading Yhwach Arc to rename his shrift to the Stigma, and Shaz only appears in chapter 512. One of the few Sternritter to travel to the royal palace that isn't a member of the Schutzstaffel is Sternritter W the Wind, Nyanzol Wyzol. This particular Sternritter is themed around things winding and bending, hence his most unusual feature, his second tongue. The idea, of course, is that he is constantly tongue-twisted, tongue-tied, and this comes through in his intense lisp. Nyanzol doesn't wield a spirit weapon, instead keeping his arms inside his peculiar robe almost constantly. I have to assume this rather strange uniform was designed specifically to keep his arms inside unless absolutely necessary, to keep him from using his arms and maybe accidentally warping something. Speaking of which, Nyanzol's power is a simple one. The wind enables him to turn incoming attacks away from either himself or a particular target. Upon their initial invasion into the royal palace, Yhwach Arc keeps Nyanzol hidden in his personal shadow in order to drive enemy attacks away from him. Nyanzol is even capable of bending bodies away from his finger to the point where they will split in two. And while that is kind of cool, he is then killed almost immediately by Senjumaru. There really isn't much more to say about this character, and he is killed off very quickly, lasting only from chapter 597 to chapter 599. Sternritter X, the X-axis Lilbaro, was the first Sternritter to receive a shrift from Yhwach Arc, and as a result, the leader of the Schutzstaffel considers himself to be both Yhwach Arc's masterpiece and the man closest to God himself. Due to his position and the belief that comes with it, Leal is unflinchingly zealous, believing himself to be God's executioner. Leal's power is initially simple. Using his huge sniper rifle Diagram, which he also considers to be his bow, Leal can destroy anything and everything on that axis. He doesn't fire bullets, but instead obliterates everything on the X-axis from existence without prejudice, and his attacks simply cannot be blocked as a result, because there's nothing to block. Things are just being removed up until Leal's designated target. However, from this point onwards, things do get a little more complex. He also keeps his tattooed left eye closed constantly, unless he finds himself in a crisis in the midst of battle, during which time he is allowed to open it briefly to unleash the true power of the X-axis. Once he's opened it 3 times, he can keep it open for the rest of the fight, at which point he becomes totally intangible. I've always wondered about this idea that he has these rules imposed upon him, because, at least as far as I can tell, there still is no downside. If he's allowed to open his eye whenever he's in real crisis, and that turns him intangible, then he's always going to dodge and survive said crisis. And then by the time he opens them 3 times, he just gets to have them open anyway. So I don't really know where the disadvantage is. If he's allowed to open his eye when he's in crisis, when he's in a moment of potentially being killed, it's no different to having his eye open anyway. Appearing heavily between chapter 599 and 654, Leal is one of the arc's most prolific villains. Aside from his aforementioned spirit weapon, Leal's Volston dish Zilliel, which he activates via his Quincy Cross, the tattoo around his eye, has 2 distinct forms, both of which are extraordinarily powerful and almost impossible to kill, and I would argue have the most overtly kind of angelic, religious, biblical theming of all the Sternritter Volstendish. And yes, even having his head cut off by Kyoraku's bankai simply wasn't enough to get the deed done. With his power, however, scattered by Nanao's Shinken Hakyoken and his halo destroyed, Leal splits into several chirping birds, fragments of his former power, which are both considerably weaker than he was previously and, more importantly, actually killable now. Lloyd and Royd Lloyd are a pair of twins occupying a single spot within the Sternritter, Sternritter Y, the Yourself. Their ability allows them to each mimic the appearance of a target, but with a slight twist. They're also capable of mimicking the target's power and mind. Now, originally, thanks to the manga, we thought only Lloyd could mimic power, while only Royd could mimic the mind, but Kubo recently revealed that both brothers do in fact copy both aspects, but to different degrees. Lloyd mimics 100% of his target's power, while only mimicking 70 to 80% of their mind, and then the reverse is true for Royd. And interestingly, thanks to their backstory, we see this is a power that they developed naturally, after seemingly being born in the more recent era. While Lloyd is killed almost immediately by Kenpachi, Royd proves incredibly dangerous, even baiting out Yamamoto's bankai for a short while. Again, like Berenice and Jerome, Lloyd is only around between chapter 502 and 3, but again he's never seen alive in the present day. Royd is more difficult to say, however, but if we assume that he was Yhwach for the entirety of the first invasion, then he appears from chapter 493 through to 511. However, another popular theory was that Royd swapped places with Yhwach when the three Sternritter jumped Yamamoto, and if that's the case, Royd's lifespan lasted from 506 to 511 instead. The final Sternritter to discuss is also the last of the Bambis, Sternritter Z the Zombie Giselle Jewel. Giselle is a quirky and eccentric member of the squad, albeit with a truly dark side to her. Giselle's shrift allows her to transform targets into zombies, both living and dead, by using her blood to do her bidding from beyond the grave. When in control of the zombies, whether they are Shinigami or Quincy, Giselle is monstrously callous, despite her more goofy surface demeanour, and doesn't care for their well-being whatsoever, even for those she claims to be her friends, like Bambietta, whom Giselle brutalises and treats like a slave. Giselle herself is also practically immortal as a result of her shrift, with even her hair resembling the antenna of a cockroach, and can manipulate flesh to heal wounds and even reattach limbs. Giselle holds a parasitic, puppeteer-like power over those who have her blood, and will try to recover that blood if she herself is in danger. Along with her shrift, Giselle also uses her Quincy cross, this time from a blue bag around her waist, to generate a bow made up of bones. Her Volstendish Azalbiora gives her skeletal wings, a rib cage, and the ability to conjure an army of cartoon skeletons. Again, all of this is greatly expanded on thanks to the anime. During her fight with Ichigo in the manga, Giselle's wish is an interesting one. Kubo only depicts it as a totally black panel. This is either down to it being one of two things. Either Giselle longs for, well, nothingness, the dark of the void itself, or, perhaps more likely, whatever Giselle wishes for had to be censored by Kubo himself. After all, she does seem to be a rather depraved individual. Giselle has the exact same manga lifespan as Lil Toto, ranging from chapter 544 to chapter 635. And that's it for every single Sternritter in the 1000 Year Blood War arc explained, hopefully, fairly succinctly. It's probably, about an hour long at this point, so maybe not, but I've done my best. I've tried to cover, holistically, about as much as we know for each of these characters without going through their entire role in the story. So we've looked at the character themselves, their powers, their shrift, their personality, any kind of backstory or history they might have, any motive they might have. It should all be here, and I do hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments, a pretty simple one, who is your favourite member of the Sternritter? And if you want to go there, who's your least favourite as well? I'd love to know. Alright everyone, once again, thank you so very much for watching. Consider hitting subscribe if you haven't done already. It really would make the world of difference. Check out Mr. Tomo Talks Games. I just put out a video over there, a fairly passionate video, I would say, an impassioned rant about the state of Xbox after this latest round of layoffs, this latest culling. I'd love to get your opinion on that as well. Go check it out. Maybe leave a subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It really would make a massive difference to the growth of that channel as well. Okay, everyone, once again, thank you so very much for watching. A huge thank you goes out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon, who, again, I mean, your support really does make all the difference in the world, especially during the first half of the year. YouTube is a little bit rough, a little bit sketchy. It does just mean everything to me that you are over there supporting me, and again, I just can't thank you enough. So, again, thank you very much. Alright, everyone, once again, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.